Well, shooters and reloaders out there, it's Fortune Cookie 45 LC coming to you from the hot lead zone. And tonight's topic is cleaning the primer pockets of our pistol ammunition, our reloads. Now, of course, clean primer pockets and uniform primer pockets and deburred primer flash holes are all essential in rifle shooting because we're dealing with minute of angle or sub-minute of angle accuracy at distance. But with our handguns, we're looking at maybe 4 MOA, 6 MOA, this kind of thing. So with that level of accuracy, we don't need to look at every little tiny thing for accuracy. Now, of course, cleaning and polishing our brass is essential to do because it makes our dies and our reloading work better, and the ammunition functions better in our guns. And it makes us feel better to have clean primer pockets like these. And we can achieve this with one extra step, that's decapping our brass before we wet tumble it. And if we do that, we'll get clean primer pockets. But is it worth the extra step? Is cleaning the primer pockets an option for us, or is it essential? Now, we all know that our progressive reloading machines, the recommendation is to take our clean polished brass that has not been decapped and go ahead and run them through the progressive press. And we wind up with millions of rounds of good ammunition without clean primer pockets. Why does that work? Let's look at that. That's the purpose of this video. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to use this brass that was purchased back in 1971. And once again, the reason why we know that is the manufacturer that did the commercial reloading bought the brass from another company, and then they used a engine turning to remove the head stamp. So I have 100 of these cases that have these distinctive turned heads on them. And so I've had this brass all these years. Now, this brass has never been trimmed, and it's never had the primer pockets cleaned. So if you're going to have problems with case length, it would have shown up long before now. Same with the primer pockets, because these have been reloaded a lot of times. In 44 years, even if I loaded them only once a year, that's 44 reloads. These cases never wear out. Our big bore cases just keep going on and on and on. Now, these are loaded with 310 grain Lee cast bullets, and they have a maximum charge of 2400 powder in there. Now, I'm not going to give you the charge because 310 grains is not the rated bullet weight for this bullet. They're supposed to only weigh 300 grains, but they actually weigh 310. Now, these are 5 fired cases, and 4 of them are those turned head stamp cases. And I got this one here to be a comparison. But you'll notice that these 3 are that maximum load with the 310 grain bullet. Primer's pretty well flattened out, and the primer strikes have been minimalized. Not cratered, but these are pretty hot loads here. These are not quite as hot. So I haven't favored this brass at all. Now let's go ahead and deprime these and look at the primer pockets. By the way, in case you're wondering, the brass never been trimmed, and so here we are at 1.278. Now you know that maximum is 1.285, and we're looking at 1.279 and 1.281 and 1.275 and 1.276. So you see, they just don't lengthen. Now let's look at the primer pockets. Notice something very interesting. Here's a level of fouling in the primer pocket from a more current Winchester case. These 3 are fired with the maximum load of 2400 with the 310 grain bullet. And near as I can figure, this has been loaded anywhere from 60 to 80 times. So with all those reloads, if the primer pockets kept building up and fouling, you wouldn't see about an equal amount. This one has a deeper turned head. It's the other 50 rounds. And again, you see the buildup is about equal to the more current Winchester case. There is not excessive buildup in the primer pockets of these old rounds. How can that be? The first thing we notice is that the fouling does not interfere with the seating of the next primer. And the reason that is because the primer sits right in the bottom of the primer pocket with metal-to-metal contact. And when the primer fires, any fouling does not get on the actual seat of the primer in the primer pocket. So the next primer goes in there, has the same metal-metal contact. No interference with the seating of the next primer caused by fouling. Now notice in this unclean primer pocket that the fouling hasn't built up excessively. The reason why is the anvil that sits in there gives a little shadow effect. But when the primer goes off, you get a tremendous vortex of flame. And you only get a little shadow caused by the anvil of fouling. The rest of the fouling actually is blasted and burned and actually consumed, driven through the flash hole into the main charge, so that the fouling does not build up excessively. Now in rifle shooting, it's arguable that the vortex of flame could be modified by any fouling in there, so that it could cause a little variation in your load. And this is important if you're trying to load sub-MOA or bench rest shooting. But in handgun ammo, where our best accuracy is in the order of 4 MOA to 6 MOA, this is not a significant situation. Any vortex caused by what little fouling is in there will not introduce enough to affect the accuracy of our handgun ammo. And that's why the fouling is not really a problem in the primer pocket of handgun rounds. So shooters and reloaders out there, of course, if you like to have clean primer pockets, by all means go for it. But if you want to go ahead and use that time to load a little bit more ammo, well then perhaps that's a good thing to do. This is certainly an option for any reloader of handgun ammo. Fortune Cookie 45LC, bye for now.